Okay, hi everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time as always. I'm Sarah Higgins. I'm the Member Education and Events Director with the New York State Restaurant Association, and I am joined by Amy Ellis and Susan Zimmett. They are from the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance with New York State. They're going to talk to us today about a really awesome opportunity for you all called the Restaurant Meals Program under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Um, I am not going to talk too much, but as a reminder, the presentation is being recorded, and if you're a NYSRA member, you'll have the ability to log into your account and view our webinar archive. Any questions on that, you can email us at info@nysra.org. And if you have questions for Amy or Susan, we can take those at the end of the presentation. You can enter those into the Q&A box as we go along, and I will be sure that we get through all of those at the end. Amy and Susan, thank you so much for your time. I will turn it over to you to get started.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to be here. Hopefully, some of you are familiar with SNAP and the Restaurant Meals Program. Signed into law by Governor Kathy Hochul in October of 2021. The program launched in New York State with a pilot in January 2024, and then expanded statewide just this past January in 2025. So the program is really brand new, and we're really excited that we are now open statewide to start onboarding restaurants in New York State for the program. New York's Restaurant Meals Program is here. The program is designed to help those unable to prepare meals for themselves at home or who do not have permanent housing for storing and preparing food with the ability to buy prepared meals at participating restaurants. Until the launch of RMP, SNAP participants could not purchase hot food using their benefits. So this is really an exciting opportunity for both SNAP clients and restaurants alike. New York is now the 9th state to introduce the program, which is also exciting. And it's pretty easy. There isn't a lot of hoops that clients have to jump through. It's as easy as swiping their benefit card. With RMP, SNAP clients can order directly at participating restaurants and pay using their SNAP EBT card. It's that simple. Helping communities across New York State, that's where all of you come in. By partnering with participating restaurants, RMP expands access to fresh and nutritionally balanced meals for eligible individuals and families, offering New Yorkers multiple ways to access hot, affordable, and culturally appropriate food, while supporting small, family-owned local restaurants that know their communities and their neighborhoods. Some of the benefits of participating in the New York State RMP can include, at the end of the day, it's revenue. It adds a new revenue stream for businesses, increases foot traffic to to businesses in the neighborhoods and communities. You're becoming an essential part of the community, which is great. Helping those in need, provides prepared meals to those who don't have access, helps fight food insecurity by increasing access to nutritious food, improves customer loyalty, and creates repeat customers. So again, it's mutually beneficial for SNAP clients and restaurant owners alike. I think it's also important to take note that New York State also includes what we call quick serve restaurants like McDonald's, KFC's, Popeyes. As they do provide an early morning breakfast, in many cases near shelters. They provide coverage, as you may be aware, in areas that are otherwise food deserts in New York State. So they do serve a niche in the community. Okay, so who qualifies to use SNAP? That's a good one. Not everyone who gets SNAP benefits in New York State qualifies. There's eligibility for the Restaurant Meals Program, and that eligibility falls under elderly. People have to be 60 years of age or older, disabled, homeless, or a spouse of a SNAP client who is eligible for RMP. So it's really meant for those who have the inability to prepare food at home. They're able to get a restaurant meal that's hot and prepared for immediate consumption. It's also important to note that the SNAP client does not have to apply for RMP if one or more of the requirements are met above. the case will automatically be coded and updated as RMP by their county caseworker. Becoming a SNAP New York State RMP retailer is a SNAP. There's a two-step authorization process. First, you get approval from the state, New York State OTDA, which is this office. That's the first step. The application comes here, we approve it, and then we send it back to you, and then you have to complete the USDA F&S application, at which point they authorize you to be an RMP retailer and the ability to accept SNAP. And then you have to get set up with an EBD processor. So this is what the card looks like. So your establishment needs to be able to process EBT cards, and they're much like a debit card. They've got a swipe, a strip on the back. They get swiped. They enter their 4-digit PIN. We're good to go. Requirements. So restaurants with more than 50% of total gross retail sales that come from the sale of hot or cold prepared foods intended for immediate consumption may apply. Your establishment must be handicap accessible. You must obviously have the point of sale system to accept EBT. You also, must display a SNAP RMP decal, which indicates, that you are an RMP retailer. Provide a 10% discount on all menu items. Cannot charge sales tax, and gratuities cannot be included in the cost of the meal, and EBT cannot be accepted for gratuities either. They may leave cash. Alcohol can also cannot be purchased using SNAP benefits. And again, much like a debit card, SNAP clients will swipe their EBT card and enter a 4-digit PIN.
I just want to jump in and just say one quick
Yep.
thing. You don't have to worry about having the point of sale system until you get approved by F&S. So you don't have to wait to get that system to do the application. We're just letting you know that once you do get approved, you have to have it to be able to swipe the card. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right. No, that's a good point. But it's something that you want to be thinking about,
right,
and maybe do a little bit of research, before, while you're doing your application, do a little bit of research, reach out to your credit card processing company in the meantime, and sort of get some of that lined up so that when you do get authorization from F&S, you're ready, you're ready to implement immediately. Again, it's a two-step approval process. The first step is with New York State approval. We'll mail after today's call, we'll send everybody the New York State application. That's a pretty easy process. We send that back to you, and then you send it off to the USDA F&S for their authorization. So the first step is with the state, and then the second step is with the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. And these are some of the steps. The first step is approval from New York State. The agreement needs to be filled out and returned. We approve it, and then we get it back to you, and then you take the next steps with, F&S.
And I just want to say the New York State application is very, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's really 7 pages. You only really have to fill out 3. And it's really just filling out your information of your name, your address, your email, the name of the restaurant, things like that. Very, very, very simple. So, when you get that to us, we just go through to make sure everything is filled out. We get it to legal. They usually get it back to us pretty quickly. We'll get it back to you. The signed agreement, which you have to then include with your USDA F&S application. And when we send it back to you, we actually help give you a little bit of instructions about what you need to make sure you do with your application and what you need to include. And I'll just add in very, very quickly that what we're finding with F&S is if the application to F&S is easy to read and you have all the documentation, you can get approved absolutely incredibly very, very, very fast and get your EBT and be in business to start accepting SNAP clients. Where the problem comes is when you don't send everything in and they have to get back to you, and it becomes a given, back and forth. So I just wanted to point that out.
And then below, number 3 under step 1, we have 2 emails. You can send your agreement back to this one, the New York State RMP at otda.newyork.gov, or you can send it to me, either way. And we do all of our communication via email, and the USDA FNS also does their communication via email.
Except for the actual application. The actual application has to be mailed in
right.
to the address that will give you. So you
Right.
have to do hard copy for the application to the USDA. You can do an email to us. That's not a problem. USDA asks for hard copy, but then they'll reach out to you via email, which is why it's really important that if you're going through the process, that you keep checking your emails and look in your spam file just to make sure that when they reach out to you, their notice didn't go into spam, because if you don't get back to them within a reasonable time, they're going to just pull your application. But again, we'll share all of this with you if you choose to become a restaurant meals program applicant and start to go through the process. Once we get your application, we get it back to you, we'll help you, to understand what you need to get it to FNS.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll walk you through it. And this won't be the first time that you'll see this information. You'll get all of this again once, you decide whether or not you want to become an RMP restaurant. Next, we talked about EBT processing and equipment needs. All SNAP RMP authorized retailers must pay for their own equipment and services and should arrange for lease or purchase of EBT equipment and services. And again, this is just sort of a list of POS vendors that have been working on RMP restaurants over the last year and a half. So we've just collected like a little list, but you may have your own, vendor that you're already working with that can easily set you up. And again, this is information that you'll get from us, like Susan said, once you decide whether or not you want to become an RMP restaurant.
So just also with the point of sale service, of course, there's different costs. Some people who have Clover, Clover can just hit a button and make you EBT eligible without you having to get any new equipment. Toast doesn't have anything right now to help. I mean, doesn't have it on their computer, but because so many restaurants across the country, and especially in New York State now, are becoming a part of the program, Toast is actually now working with their restaurants to help them, set up an EBT swiper very easily. And then we also have contacts with some people we're working with. So if anybody starts to have a little bit of a hard time, we're able to get you to somebody who can help you very quickly.
Yes. Okay. So just again, some important information. The USDA FNS will respond to your application via email once you've mailed everything. So it's like Susan said, it's important to check your email regularly for communication from their office. We've heard many instances of emails, like Susan said, ending up in spam or junk folders. So just keep an eye on that. Our approval process at the New York State level takes about 2 weeks. We'll get that back to you. USDA FNS process can take up to 3 months, but we're seeing things happening a lot quicker with, single independent locations. You have one restaurant, you're sending everything, you've included everything that they need. It's happening a lot quicker within a couple of weeks.
So just as a quick, just go back to that for a second, Aim. Just a quick thing, we've seen that it could take, like if a restaurant has 10 locations and they do 10 locations in an application, obviously it's going to take longer for FNS to check every single restaurant and all of your documentation. So that could take a while, but we've seen cases, not a lot, but we have seen cases where we'll approve your application like within like a day, get it back to you, you get it to FNS, and then like 3 days later, you get approved. It hasn't happened a lot, but it does happen. So if everything's done correctly, if everything's sent in, you could find yourself up and running as long as you have your EBT thing set up like within 2 weeks and start getting extra clients coming in. So it's really a matter of just really taking the time, which is not a lot, and doing it correctly. And there could be no problems. It could be that simple.
At this point, these are participating restaurants. This is our website, which also has a lot of information. The link is right here, New York State OTDA RMP program. You can easily find more information and a lot of information that we're talking about today here. as well. Right now, we've got about 135 restaurants in the program in more than 29 counties. We just added Nassau County this past week, and these restaurants are open for EBT SNAP transactions. And so we always, it's a continual process. We're always like, onboarding. We've got an additional 350 plus in the onboarding process across the state. So it's just a continuous loop of, adding restaurants, bringing on new, adding restaurants, and bringing on new. This is what the decal looks like. So you would put this, somewhere in your establishment in the window. Right here's a storefront, and down in New York. And then again, here's our website, and there's a great spot for information for restaurant owners and then participating restaurants. And you can find the list here. And when you click in the county, it shows you, or borough, it shows you, all the list of participating restaurants in each county and or borough.
And obviously, we're very anxious. Like Amy said, we started with a pilot in Rochester and New York City. So if you actually go and look through this, you'll see a lot of restaurants in Brooklyn, which is where we sort of started, the Bronx, places like that. You might only see like one KFC in, Cayuga or whatever. So we're very, very anxious to get a restaurant in every county of the state, and then get more restaurants in every county that only has one or two.
Staff, this is our contact information, the website down here. Myself and Susan, you can reach out to us at any time. Like I said, after today's call, we'll send everybody the application so that they can get started with more information and our contact information if in fact you're interested in becoming part of the program. We'll do questions. These are some of the commonly asked questions that we get. I'm assuming, but I should never assume, like Susan says, that everyone is familiar with SNAP in general, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. The program helps low-income, food insecure individuals the ability to purchase food at supermarkets, farmers markets, and now, if eligible, at a restaurant that has a restaurant meals program. Food is purchased by using an electronics benefits card, much like using a debit card. What items can I sell? You can sell anything that's on your menu that you serve hot or cold, with the exception of alcohol. Take out or eat in, both. Clients can come in and they can sit down, or they can get takeout, either way. And then we did talk a little bit about the onboarding process. How soon can I apply and be onboarded? You can apply today. And once we approve your agreement and get that back to you, as quickly as you can get the next steps and the information off to FNS. And like we said, it just depends on how clean the application is and how legible, and, you've included all the necessary documentation, you could be authorized within a couple of weeks. And is there a set meal price? There's not a set meal price. However, anything on your menu is eligible. All items have to receive a 10% discount. And that's it. Susan, do you have any more on the 10% discount?
No, the only thing with the 10% discount is, again, it's just across the board. There are other states where, they let the restaurant choose what they want to discount, but it creates confusion. So like, like say a Subway where they discount the turkey, but not the roast beef. So somebody orders a roast beef and then they go to pay for it and find out that actually that's not eligible, and then they don't have a meal and the restaurant's stuck with a meal. So we wanted to make this program as easy as possible for the restaurants, for the clients, for the social service agencies. So we decided to do a 10% across the board, similar to senior discounts, police discounts, fire discounts. And so if you're like a restaurant, and even if you have like certain things on your counter, now let's take a bakery, for example. A bakery where with a restaurant, you have to have 50% or 51% of your sales has to be hot food, prepared foods. It can't be alcohol. So like if we get something that's a restaurant and a bar, the first question we'll ask is, do you have 51% of your sales in food? They say yes. We say, okay, great. Whatever. bakery too, it has to be 51% in prepared food, which a lot of bakeries do. You know, it can't just be all bagels and donuts. But if you're a bakery that does have prepared food, but you have a wrapped corn muffin on the counter, you can sell that too at a 10% discount. That's not a problem. So anything in your restaurant you can sell at a 10% discount, except for, you know, alcohol, and you can't leave a tip with that.
Yeah.
And pretty much that. Now, just one quick thing also with the 10% discount. There are some restaurants that have such a small margin that for them to do the 10% discount is a hard lift. And so it might not be the right program. But other restaurants have told us we pay so much money for Uber, you know, and for other transportation and delivery accounts, the 10% is not a big deal. So we have found it's been working. There haven't been any problems. And just to give an understanding, there are some regions, some zip codes that have such large numbers of consumers that are eligible, like in Brooklyn, there could be one zip code that has close to 25,000 eligible restaurant meal program participants, and the zip code next to it can have 10,000, and the zip code on the other side can have 20,000. There could be 50,000 eligible participants. So you have to sort of decide that there might be so many people that are coming in, it's worth the 10% because I'm getting that many more people. And if you wanted to ask us to take a look at your zip code and see how many people are in your area so you can weigh whether this program is right for you or not, we're more than happy to provide you, you know, a general understanding of how big the clientele would be in your area. Because some areas, even with the 10% discount, you can get a couple of thousand new customers coming in, and that might more than make up for the 10% discount. So, you know, you have to decide if this program is right for you.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things too before we get to the couple of questions that we have. And as a reminder, if you do have questions, please enter those into the Q&A box. I was very eager to do this webinar because we've had a lot of feedback that the programs, and the name of the actual program is escaping me, so I apologize, that were created during COVID, where
the restaurant resiliency.
Yes, restaurant resiliency. There was people, our members were really disappointed when that program stopped, because that's sort of, you're meeting two needs, right? Like you're meeting the need of a group of people who need that product, and you're meeting the need of the restaurant. You're building their business. So this is really great. And I just want to commend Amy and Susan. They speak so passionately about this program because they've really taken it and made it New York State's own, but it feels really personal, and we appreciate that here at the Restaurant Association.
Yeah. And before we go through, I just to go off what you said, Sarah, the Restaurant Resiliency Program was a fabulous program that helped the restaurants during COVID to be able to make up for all the lost business. And we do know from some restaurants that actually the Restaurant Resiliency Program was what kept them open during COVID, you know, which was fabulous. And yes, unfortunately, it did go away, but it was there to serve a purpose. But the Restaurant Meals Program did pick up, and even though it's a little bit of a different program, obviously with Restaurant Resiliency, you're getting the cash, you know, and you're preparing the meals, and then you're giving it back to the food bank to get it out. This is a little bit more complicated, but this program's been around for a very, very, very long time. It didn't take off. I mean, New York State did this program a long time ago, and for some reason it just didn't work. But 5 years ago, legislators did the legislation. It got approved. The governor signed it into law, and our agency was asked to put this together. And we spent a lot of time because we really wanted to do a program that really worked for the restaurants. And we actually started off by reaching out to the Restaurant Resiliency restaurants to be the first ones in Rochester and New York City to be part of the pilot, because we wanted restaurants that have worked with government and understand how government operates to sort of be a part of the program with us. We knew them, they knew us. So, and we have I have a massive file of restaurants that were part of the Restaurant Resiliency Program. And now that this program is expanded statewide, when Amy and I have enough time to sit down and do something other than just processing applications, you know, we want to start reaching out to a lot of those restaurants that did get money for the Restaurant Resiliency and say, would you want to be a part of this? And just before we go into the questions you've asked, I just want to also point out some states like Rhode Island, which has been a part of this program for a long time, they only use subway for some reason. They only have about 10 subways, end of story. Massachusetts is being very, very, very specific. They're using only like sort of non like culinary culinary various culinary type restaurants, but more like Spanish, Mexican, that kind of stuff. They're using smaller restaurants. They have to be independently owned, and they're only approving a few in each area type of thing. We wanted our program to be incredibly vibrant. We wanted our program to benefit every restaurant in New York State that wanted to be a part of this program. And even though when you go and you look at the site, you'll see a lot of fast food versus independent restaurants, we really want to build the program with a lot of independent restaurants, culinary diversity. And the thing is with the fast food restaurants, they're able to use consultants who can put the applications together for them. Sometimes some of the restaurant owners own 10, 15, 20, 50. So you can have one restaurant owner get 50 restaurants approved, but we have to get 50 independent restaurants to get 50 restaurants, approved. So we're very anxious to get more family independent restaurants, into the program, but we're not denying the quick serving restaurants either because they do serve a purpose. So I just wanted to say that. But we welcome everybody, and we'll look at us as your partner. And the way we approach this program is, if there are going to be issues, we want the issues to be on our side, not on your side. So we're here to help you to make sure you can have the most successful program going forward, because that's how this program is going to be a success, which it already is, which is why what happened was we started with New York City and Rochester. We were going to roll it out slowly, a couple of counties at a time. But because the program's been so successful through the first year, we chose not to wait and roll it out. We just chose to open it up to the entire state. So we're really excited about that. Now we want the entire state to have restaurants in every corner of New York State.
We appreciate that. Okay. We talked a little bit about the financials at the end of the discussion there. So do merchant processing fees apply to these sales?
So
go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to say merchant processing fees would only be related to your EBT processing equipment. So whatever, that depends on the vendor that you're using.
Okay. So I guess then specifically, obviously the credit card, what about credit card fees? How does that work?
No, well, you can't use a credit card. In other words, the reason why.
I just want to be clear. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the reason why you get that EBT processor, which Amy was showing the different people. So it's just another little card thing that you just swipe. The reason you get that's the only thing that you can process an EBT card. So the EBT card looks like a credit card, but you can't put it through your regular processor. It has to go through the EBT processor, unless it's maybe Clover, where there's a button that you would press EBT and then you swipe the card. So whatever the fee is to get your processor up and running, which varies by who you're using, that's it's for those sales.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. There's none of the other fees in that. Yep. Okay. Let's see. You said you talked specifically about a bakery. How about a coffee shop? A coffee shop would apply, correct?
As long as a coffee shop is considered a restaurant, it doesn't matter if you're a bakery, if you're a coffee shop, if you're a fast serving restaurant, if you're even a booth in like in a big gigantic, like up in Rochester, there's the public market and people have booths. Okay, there's a restaurant that's onboarded that just has a booth within the public market, but they have an FS number. They were approved as a restaurant. So as long as you're approved as a restaurant, you could be a part of the restaurant meals program.
But you can't just have coffee and bagels. You have to you've got to have prepared foods.
Right. Okay. So another question that we've gotten a lot was like bodegas. Where we would love to have bodegas because so many of them serve hot food, but bodegas have been approved as a supermarket.
Differently, right?
Okay, so they're a supermarket, so they can't be approved for restaurant meals because they're not a restaurant. Same thing with gas stations. and I used to shop in gas stations all the time, for food, but a gas station is approved as quote a gas station, not a restaurant.
As a retailer.
So you have to be a restaurant with an FNS number to be able to be approved for this program, and you have to be a for-profit restaurant.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, and how could caterers fit into this program?
They don't right now.
Okay.
Yeah, they can't unless they have a actual site. Like in other words,
like a restaurant site.
Like a lot of restaurants have the restaurant that you can go and sit down and order meals, but they also cater events.
Right.
So like there's this place in Newport, it's called the Main Course. Well, they have a sit down restaurant, but they could apply even though they do so much catering. It's insane, but they're able because they have a actual physical site that's a restaurant, and that's what you have to have. You have to have brick and mortar.
Right. And the question is actually, in other states, do caterers work with this program? And I'm not sure.
No,
I don't think so.
It's the rules are the same. The rules are the same.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. Who can apply and who can be approved are set by FNS, and every state has to match that. How the state sets the program up is up to the state. So some states set the program up where only the specials are restaurant meals eligible. Some states set it up where some restaurants create their own restaurant meal menu with a smaller meal at a discounted price. We again chose to make it as easy as possible, where it was like we don't want every restaurant having a different program, a different plan. We want every restaurant to basically just 10% across the board, be handicap accessible, end of story. And so again, we wanted to have as few problems as possible. So the training is easier and there's less confusion.
Right.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Great. Okay, Susan and Amy's contact information is on the slide there. Thanks, Amy, for putting that up. I know there was I had a question about, a specific area and how many restaurants are involved in that area, how many people would be apply
eligible.
to the program, eligible. So feel free to reach out to Susan and Amy, and I'm always happy to forward you to info@nisra.org.
And I will just say just very quickly, when you do go look at the website, so like the person who asked how many restaurants are already applying, are already in my region, if you go to the website and you click on your county, you'll see how many restaurants. Like if you go to Brooklyn, you'll see probably 20 restaurants that are participating. If you go to Cattaraugus, you might just see Kentucky Fried Chicken and that's it. However, if you go tomorrow, there might be another restaurant in Cattaraugus that just got onboarded. So every day it's changing, because every day we'll get a restaurant letting us know they were FNS approved. As soon as they're approved, we say, okay, did you get your EBT system? When they tell us they have it and it's set up and they're ready to accept, we get them listed right away. And so it is changing like Amy just said, we just added Nassau County. It might not have been there yesterday, but it will be there today. So it's an evolving process, constantly upgrading, and hopefully your restaurants within a month or so will be on here also.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amy and Susan.
You're so welcome.
You.
Again, info@nisra.org. The presentation was recorded also. If you have any questions, you can take a look at that in our webinar archive. Thank you so much,
everyone,
for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.